class is on trees. And you're gonna get the inside detail on trees. All the nitty gritty on how I look at it. As a gardener, and then also as a nursery owner, what am I looking for on trees? And trees are the area that adds value to your property, more than anything else. It's also the least understood. Let me hand this out so that I don't have to worry about them going away. It's how to plant. We'll go over how to actually plant a tree in the mountain region. I have some of these. Take some and hand them back that way. There's a couple of them here. Just take them and hand them back that way. Welcome, folks. Sit any place. You're fine. I got it. Okay, did I get enough of them back there?
Thank you.
So my goal today is how to shop for a tree. How would I look at trees? And then how to plant. And we'll go over both deciduous trees and evergreen trees. I thought it might even be, and this is a good class size, be a walking tour. So at the end, we'll kind of walk through and kind of go over, okay, here's what I'm looking at, here's what you should look for, here's a good tree, here's a bad tree. The thing I can tell you is with trees, an ugly tree never gets beautiful. I'm telling you, it's just, there's no way to turn them around. Now a shrub, you can do that with. We can work for a couple seasons and turn around a lilac that's stubbornly not blooming. We could force it to bloom. But a tree, once it's dog-legged, once it's ugly, bald on one side, once it's got a burn, scorch on one side, once it's got limbs broken, it won't regrow. We're a tree limb, let's say a limb's coming out, and you bought that home that's been sitting idle for a couple of years, and it's got that ugly tree out there. It's got a spruce that's real thin and wispy. It just doesn't look good. You just look at it and go, God, I wish that thing looked better. Those trees, typically, I can go through a lot of rigmarole. I can sell you a lot of product. We'll try. But eventually, in a couple of years, you're probably going to be chainsawing the thing down and then planting what you really want with your trees. Now, your trees are also the ones that add value. They're the privacy screen that's going down the row that keeps you from looking at that barky dog or RV the neighbor just bought. I mean, he spent $100 grand on it, but it's not so pretty from your bedroom window as it is from him going out in the forest. That's areas where you really add value because you can block that and have a living screen going out there. They create that privacy, secret garden feel. And for Lisa and I, we love our hot tub. And for some reason, our neighbor, love her to death, she's the greatest neighbor ever, but she knows exactly when we hit the hot tub because her bathroom light will go flick on. You can almost count on it. It's going to come on. Not that she's watching, not that it's a problem. It's just you lose your privacy. So we've strategically put trees to screen that out. She's been there for 10 years. We've been neighbors for 10 years. Great. We like each other, but you can count on it. So we just plant our way through that so we can soften up some of that and create that privacy. We use evergreens. So did she. We know there's an issue, so we just plant together. She's a gardener. I'm a gardener. It's all good. So what I've got, let's see, where do you even start? Why don't I start with, this showed up yesterday. Let me show you some things to watch for. Well, I didn't know that would be there. Let's bring it, we'll keep it right here. This is how they come off the truck, okay? Before it's been cleaned up. Now we went through all of these, we've cleaned them all up and watered them. This is what you don't want to see. This is a petticoat maple. This is one of the most beautiful maples. It's a new introduction. We brought it in 2 years ago, and it is performing magnificently. The reason I like that is because it actually has a maple leaf to it, but it's two-toned. It's got green on the top side, purple on the back side. Very, very unusual. It's got a thick, leathery leaf, which makes it very robust in our windy, dry climate. So we're finding that it performs very, very well. And in the fall, which is really why you buy a maple, this side turns orange, this side turns a purpley red. Two-toned on the same plant. It's really cool. And so I get every one that I can lay my hands on. I mean, it's so new that it's really limited production at the grower level. You just can't get that many of them. This is called Regal Petticoat Maple. The most famous of the maples is probably this one. This is autumn blaze maple. This has been done for about 15, 20 years. It's now very common. It's one of the prettiest reds. We're trying to introduce more varieties of this. So now we have one that's called, it's an orangey color. Orange is a little more unusual as far as the colors go in our fall color scheme. There's a new one called Celebration. And we've got some new reds coming. So I've got one coming in a couple of weeks called Firefall and Matador. Just screams red. I mean, come on, charge it, charge it. It's really a bright red. This one tends to be a little more free-form. Whoops, stop that. A little more free-form. It's a good, hardy red maple. Classic red leaf, red maple. The Celebration is the exact same thing, only it turns orange in color. And it has a more finite, it's got more class, less freeform, just more layering to it. The structures, as the limbs come out, stay more uniform. Whereas this one, it's going to get a wild hair and it's going to have a limb growing down to the ground. You have to clean it up to get it up to size. Just a little more gregarious, I guess, more out there. But both very good performers. This, when you're buying trees, here's a couple things we do. You never want this stake on there. Sometimes it'll have a limb. In fact, it looks like we've peeled that off. It had a wrapping and it has a stake. This is purely for shipping reasons. So we can get more trees on the truck, get them here without scarring up the trunk. That's the only goal of that. So what I would do, first and foremost, get rid of, if it's got a stake on it, you do not want that stake on your tree in a windy area. What'll happen is that tree will root out. It'll start to grow. This tree will keep it from bending and moving and growing, and it'll make for a real weak trunk. And so about 5 years out, it'll gain some girth, and then all of a sudden it'll snap. Limbs will break. It'll have a weak trunk to it. So you want, and we'll show you how to stake this properly when we're showing how to plant. But first and foremost, if you buy a tree, don't take this, we always take them off, just because you can't see the trunk very well. It hides part of the flaws, possibly. And then we don't want you planting it with a stake on it like this, because it will simply become a weak tree down the road. So we purposely take all that off. So we take that, this, where else do I have? There's one more. Can I get that? This thing, I should have picked a smaller tree, but I uncut them all yesterday, except for this one. I need to save one for the class tomorrow. So.
What's the name of this right here?
This is Regal Petticoat Maple. And all trees kind of come this way. They're sort of the same way. They'll come shipped, at least a good one, will come shipped with a stake. And yesterday we probably had 100 stakes. I mean, more than 100. We had stakes and stakes. So then it was tied up so that we can get it here without breaking the branch structure. And then we'll untie it, we'll take the stake off, and then it'll start to lean out and show off. This tree will ultimately be probably 35 feet tall by about 15 to 20 foot wide. It's a nice oval shape. It's a great street tree, great driveway tree, patios. That's what you'd place this with. So, and it comes out, it is deciduous. That is, it will lose its leaves here in another month, usually at the middle to the end of October, it'll start to have that fall change. So your autumn blaze maples will turn first, then it'll be Celebration, then it'll be Regal Petticoat. There's this progression of fall color. The very last tree to turn red in fall, usually about Thanksgiving, is the Bradford pears, or ornamental pears. There's several types of pears. When you see that one turn red, you know that winter's here. And it's kind of the last hurrah going. Fall, it is over, and now we are into winter. That's when the evergreens carry. So there's a progression of color. I guess the most famous of all of our fall color here in the mountains of Arizona, aspens. Aspens are the #1 seller. Everyone wants one. It announces fall with that classic gold color. It's a real pretty fall color. I personally don't plant aspen. They're high maintenance. I like to sell you all aspens. Well, not you all, you're my friends. Those that don't come to garden classes, I love to sell them aspens because everyone wants one. There's no derailing it because everyone wants to try it, but it's disease oriented. It just has issues. It's fraught with problems. It's a high maintenance, just very high maintenance kind of tree, which I got 2 kids to get through college yet, so I need some maintenance stuff down the road. But I don't plant them myself. I'd rather plant a birch tree. If I want a white-barked, shapely tree, I would personally plant, I do plant birch, because it's just easy care. It's drought hardy. There's no problems with it. It has no insects that go after it. It has the same aspen gold color. The only negative is the birch doesn't have that trembling leaf. The botanical or Latin name for aspen is Populus tremuloides, trembling leaf poplar. And so it just dances. And it just, in a breeze, it just dances. A birch doesn't, it tries, it just doesn't have that same sex appeal. It just doesn't have the same to it. But it is much hardier in our soils, in our wind. Okay, that's my personal thought or experiences. I'll share that with you. You can take with it what you want. I also have hundreds of aspens that landed yesterday because it's the #1 seller. So I'm ready for bear for the fall season. But you might want, if you struggle once with it, you might switch and then put a birch in because you'll have less problems. Just, there you go.
You didn't say very much about the matador. When does that
Matador will be the end of this month. You'll be in full you're seeing the leading edge right now of fall color. And then in another month, it'll be full on, everything's in color.
How long do they typically hold the color before they drop the leaves?
They'll hold their leaves for about a month. There's several, it depends on the windstorms. When it turns color and we get a real heavy windstorm, all the leaves will be gone like that. So it kind of depends, but usually 3 to 4 weeks is how long that a tree will go into color and then hold its foliage and then drop, okay? If you're worried about leaves and cleanup, go with small leaf stuff. Locusts, your ash. They're all smaller leafed, drought hardy kind of plants, and the leaves drop and kind of blow away. And there's less cleanup. It goes down to neighbors and it just goes other places. This one is going to take some cleanup. It's pretty easy, just one rake up and you're kind of done. There's no real spring bloom. There's no blossoms there that have to worry about. There's no ornamental fruits that show up. It's pretty clean and neat. I just like it because it's pretty. You just want to take your glass of iced tea in summer and camp out in a chair and just enjoy the shade. That's a maple for you.
This one has a better shape,
Oh, I don't know about better shape or there's.
but less straggly.
It's got a pretty shape to it. This one is a little more freeform. It's just as I see them growing in the field and seeing bigger examples, kind of how I would describe them. All good trees for here. Okay. This gets 35 feet by about 20 feet, something like that. That's the optimistic side. So it's a medium-sized tree.
Can you compost these leaves?
Yes, we can compost leaves, very much. The only ones you can't compost, really, as far as composting goes, walnuts have kind of a toxin, they have a strychnine kind of that comes off, and some of your evergreens, junipers. You notice nothing grows underneath a juniper tree because it's always littering stuff, and it taints the soil with, I think it's creosote is what it kind of, it's there to, it actually suffocates everything underneath it so nothing can grow. So all this space is mine, all mine. Just in nature, that's what you'll see growing like that. So it's hard to get things to grow underneath that native alligator juniper, your native, your shaggy barks, the native trees. It's difficult to get things to grow. Now I've found a few things that grow well, so if that's what you want to do, I can help you have an underplanting because I do that with my own trees. I've got arch underneath my big old, I've got a huge alligator juniper. I mean, it's spectacular. I've trimmed it up, I've shaped it, I fertilized it, I talked to it, I have it grow. It's got uplighting, it's got downlighting, it's got art underneath it, and it's planted. Where you walk in the backyard, you go, whoa, that's pretty neat because it's been gardened with. So, your deciduous trees, these guys, deciduous means it loses its leaves. has fall color typically. All of them except for probably sycamores is the only one that doesn't have a nice fall color. It goes from green to brown. And it holds on to that leaf forever. But it's big, it's sturdy, it's strong, there's a native variety of it that grows wild here. This does have some appeal, but fall color is not what you're going for with the sycamore. Everything else
What about elms?
got a pretty good color.
I don't ever remember elms doing anything but dropping them.
Elms, there's a wild elm. It's not wild, it's not native. It grows wild, a Siberian elm or a Chinese elm. But we don't sell that particular one here because it is weedy, it's trashy, it's a curse. I mean, it's a curse. It has seed that come up every place. We don't sell that one. We sell cousins of that elm that don't have the seed or they've been sterilized, they have a sterile seed. So they won't come up every place. And many of the new introductions of elms do have fall color. Very, very nice fall color. And they're tough as nails. Elms are just tough. There is a certain little worm that gets on them that can be a problem. So on the Chinese elms, the wild ones, that don't particularly like the taste of the newer hybrid varieties. So we're introducing new varieties. I'm trying to get more folks to plant elms, the good elms, because they're so tough for here. But everyone likes that wild elm. It's just a nasty tree. Okay, how do you plant this? Let's just go over that. So this tree, when you're planting a tree, you're going to have terrible dirt. It's going to be awful. In fact, some of you are going to have a difficult time digging a hole. It's going to be like jackhammer bait. You only need to go as deep as the root. You do not have to go down to China. I've seen men, full grown, like, I've got equipment. Up to here in a hole. I'm like, what are you doing down there? Get out of there. That's crazy. Don't dig like that. There's nothing down there for the roots to go after. Trees, it's a myth. They don't put a taproot on. They put I call it a hockey stick. It goes down about 2 feet, turns, then runs sideways for hundreds of feet. That's how trees really grow. So when you see a very large tree that's blown over, a very large native that has been bulldozed or moved for a footer or a house, you see this ginormous tree with a 2 foot, 3 foot root that goes out like this. That's how they grow. Because there's no water down there for them to go after. There's no food for them to go after. All the food and water is just underneath the surface. That's where the topsoil, that's where when it does rain, that's where all the moisture is, and it's pulling up as much of that moisture as it can. If you know that's how a tree is going to grow naturally, encourage it to grow that way. And so you only dig your hole as deep as the bucket, but 3 times as wide. We're encouraging roots to go sideways. That's what we're after. And saucer shape. So you kind of have a saucer shape like a teacup, saucer shaped bowl. Now, you have a pile of dirt sitting there. Some of you will have to filter your dirt. Anything bigger than a golf ball should be screened out or filtered out if it's bigger than that, the particles, it just doesn't hold moisture, doesn't have any nutritional value, does nothing but cause issues down the road. So screen all that stuff out. Some of you will be left with soil, some of you won't. You just have nothing but boulders and rocks, and you'll have to mend a little heavier. We do want to cut that earth. Most of us have very heavy clay soils, and so as soon as you put that back around this root and water it once, it will turn right back to what it was, thick, hard clay. We want to keep those particles from compacting by adding some organics into that soil to keep the soil. We're changing the structure of the soil. So we add mulch, and we bag one up. This is our mulch. We're harvesting this from Taylor, Arizona. It's an old sawmill that we take this huge pile of saw tailings. We screen it down, so it's a good local compost. It's made to add to the earth and do this amendment into the earth. Okay, it's true compost. So about 25% mulch to your native earth. We want to blend that together. Some of you, if you took a big boulder out, you can go up to about 50%, 50-50 mulch to your native earth. I wouldn't go heavier than that. All of a sudden it starts to get gooey and soggy. Then we want to add some topsoil, or there's some other ways to do that. Or for raised beds, you need a whole lot of soil. But about 25 is what we say. We gave the handout. We're going over that handout right now, how to plant. So it gives you all, what I'm just telling you, it puts it right there. You don't have to read it, you can read it on your own, but I'm just going to give you the synopsis on what really works for planting here in the mountains of Arizona. Now, as you get closer to Granite Mountain, the soils get very granity, almost sandy, at least that top layer. Then you hit this hard pan, that's like rock, like digging bar stuff. So there, the soil is so sandy, we want to add organics to keep the moisture around the root ball. You all tend to have to water more frequently because the water just goes through and flows right out. And as fast as the hose will go, the water just disappears. It's great for root development, but it tends to dry out your plants very quickly. You have to fertilize and water more often because you've got sandy soil. As you go up that 69 corridor, all the way out to, past the ranch, Yavapai Hills, Prescott Valley, all the way to Cordes Junction, it's solid clay with caliche layers. It's a calcium layer that it's basically concrete layer in the soil. Water hits that, it won't go through it. And so that's where you want to amend your soil so that it stays fluffier so the roots can get through that soil. So there's strategy on why you're doing that. And what you'll notice is there is nothing in your soil. When you dig that hole, there's nothing in there. There's no worms. You're not finding mushrooms. You're not finding anything viable in your soil. Some of you have sterile dirt. There's no living organisms in there. You have to reintroduce that into your particular planting space. And you do that by adding organics. As soon as you add some organic material into that hole, all of a sudden everything's attracted to it. Worms magically show up. I don't know where they come from, but they magically show up as soon as you start adding some organics. They'll find their way. So that's why you're doing that. Okay, you take that blend, mulch to native earth, backfill around that. Here's a mistake newbies make. Don't ever let soil touch the trunk. What you see here, keep this top of the root ball, keep it aerated. Don't bury it. If you put dirt up to about here, we'll get what we call crown rot. So bacteria will start eating at the sugar layers, and in about 18 months, 24 months, the tree will die. Because literally the bacteria will rot or eat away at the sugars and the tree becomes girdled. So it ate all the sugars around that. So keep this aerated. Don't, just trust me on that. Whether it's a fruit tree, a shade tree, an evergreen, it doesn't matter. Don't let soil touch this exposed area. It's meant to stay aerated. It needs to be aerated. Okay? Backfill and just pack that, just stomp on this. We don't want any air pockets around this root ball when we're all planted. When you're all done, I will go ahead and fertilize the top of it with the all-purpose plant food. I'll just sprinkle that on top. Now some folks go, well, shouldn't I add it in the ground? What I find is whether I blend it in with my mulch and my soil, or whether I add it on top, it matters not, just as long as you get some on. When I've got more time and finesse, I'll tend to blend it in with my mulch and my native earth, the fertilizer at the same time, backfill it. When I'm doing a big planting, I just plant it all like just a machine, just plant, and then I'll sprinkle this on top afterwards. Just get some nutrients on the tree. There is no food in your soil. We're not in the Midwest. This is hard for you all to comprehend. If you're from the Midwest, you just don't get this. But you'll need to fertilize more often here because of the lack of topsoil that we have. So you'll find there's no nutrients in there. When I get it all planted, I usually will have my watering can already mixed up with a couple gallons of water. And I'll add Root and Grow into that water mix, and I'll water that thing in right afterwards with this. This is a rooting hormone, so it encourages new root hairs to start forming. And so right now, plants, now through about Thanksgiving, plants are actively, robustly, putting on a lot of root structure. They're basically hibernating. So they're taking all that carbon, a lot of the sugars that are in the structure of the tree will be stored up in that root structure. And so you'll get some additional root formation. And so if you can encourage more roots, that's why fall is so good for planting. It's kind of the sweet spot for bigger plants, trees and shrubs. That's the whole reason. You give it the root and grow to help stabilize it from transplant shock, and also to encourage more root hairs. The more roots you get, the stronger that tree is going to be.
Do you ever pour that into the hole?
Oh, never pour this directly in the hole, no. This is concentrated, so I always cut it with water. 5-gallon bucket, a watering can of some sort, and I'll water it in that way.
But then could you put the diluted solution in the hole?
Actually, that's a good question. Okay, so his question is, can I pour it directly in the hole? Yes, you can, although I want it right around the root ball. Now, if I'm in a soil that's very dry, like we haven't had moisture in a while, so some of you will dig a hole and it's just bone dry. I mean, the soil is just, there's not a lick of moisture in there at all. There, when I'm planting in that kind of hole, I will take my hose and I will fill that hole up halfway with water, just so that I'm setting this into a moist hole. What happens is, this has got moisture. If you plant this tree into a direct bone dry type of hole, the soil will actually wick the moisture out away from the root ball. And so the tree, even though you watered it, the soil is so dry, it's wicking the water away from that root. And so you'll tend to have issues. You get tip burned, leaf burned. It'll look like it's stressed, but that's why. So when I water that, I'm not really watering the tree, I'm watering the hole, the soil around that, so it will stop wicking all that moisture away from my new planting. That's especially important in the summer, when it's just really hot and windy and dry. Less so in the fall and winter, because it's just not as hot. Okay, but very good question. I generally will not add my root and grow when I'm watering the hole. I'm just backfilling part halfway. I won't add that. I'll add this at the very, very end when it's all planted. That's how this gardener does it. This seems to work pretty well. Now, I mentioned stakes. Here we go.
Can I add that stuff to an existing tree?
You could add it to an existing tree, although I don't think I've got better stuff. If the tree is stressed, I have better, more economical kind of stuff for stress trees. This can only help, it cannot hurt. It's got a very mild fertilizer and a rooting hormone to it. If it's within the last couple of years, yes, excellent stuff. If it's more mature, we probably want to diagnose, why is that tree having an issue? Grubs, gophers, it's running out of soil, it's bumping up against rock shelves, something else is going on. I want to diagnose that and figure it out, and then treat it. Trees do need to be staked for at least one season, possibly 2 for small trees. So if it's a little guy like this, probably needs to be 2 years or so until the trunk is large enough to hold itself up by itself. This is probably 1 year. I keep it on stakes and I cut it off. Do not use little itty bitty stakes. Like that bamboo stake I took off of it. It's so thin in diameter that in a wind, it wiggles its way out of the soil. Just school of hard knocks. It was staked a month ago, now all of a sudden it's free, it's bending over in the wind because the stakes wiggled out. You do want to use a lodgepole. We get windstorms that are ferocious. I mean, have 50-mile-an-hour winds, commonplace. And so if you don't have a pretty sturdy stake, it'll wiggle its way out of the ground. A 2-inch size pole stays there. I know it looks overkill, it doesn't quite look so good, but there's a reason you're using a thicker stake, is so that it will stay in place for that year or 2 years that you need. If it's a real small tree, I might only put 1. On most trees, I'll put 2 stakes, 1 on either side of the root ball, and I'll tie off once, just right in the middle is how I'll tie off. And so we make these stake kits. It's got a V-strap, it's got all the stuff you'd need to stake it correctly. But the reason we're using this is so they'll stay in the ground, they don't give, and ideally you want to tie it once so the tree will actually move in the wind, but it won't lay over in the wind and it won't lean to the northeast. As you walk through your neighborhood, you'll spot the trees that were not staked in their youth. They're all leaning to the northeast. Count on it. You just go, oh, that one was never staked. Because we get this prevailing southwest wind that blows, usually starting in the spring to the summer, and that's right when the leaves are starting to form, when new candle growth is coming out, they'll start to form it, so to catch that wind. These things are huge umbrellas, the sails basically. that catch the wind, they'll start to lean. And it's unrelenting. Day and night, it's a southwest wind. That tree will start to grow, and then it solidifies that way. And there's no correcting it. Once it's growing that way, there's no way to bring it back. So the stakes keep it to where when it starts to grow, it starts to get its strength. And once it grows and it gets a couple rings of growth, it'll stay in that form. It'll be straight up and down, be the tree that you want. Yeah.
If you have a multi-trunked tree,
Yeah.
what would you do then?
Like an aspen.
I was thinking
Okay,
like
so the
a-
question is,
like a desert willow. I was thinking.
what do you do with a multi-trunked tree? I have one right here. This aspens are the most common. Desert willows, chase trees, there's several like that. Here I plant one. Usually I'll plant a stake on either side and just tie off once or twice to these. So that's how I do it.
Just kind of loosely.
Yeah, loosely. Again, we want them to move. We just don't want them to lay like this and stay that way. We want to keep them up. So if you do that, you'll have a very strong tree. It's like working its muscles. So the wood will actually be sturdier, stiffer, stronger, and more viable. If you keep a stake right next to the trunk, it'll grow a growth ring, but it'll be weak. It's like having your arm in a cast for like a year. How much muscle mass you can have left? None. So you take the cast off, and you can hardly lift anything. Same thing with a tree. Exact same principle.
We have some leftover rebar from the house. Do you use rebar as a stakes?
Okay, can you use rebar? How to use rebar? You probably could use rebar if you angle it short pieces, angle it to the ground, and then tie it down to the ground. We don't plant that way because it's a liability issue. You're going to give your insurance a workout because someone's going to trip over it, a kid's going to bike through, something's going to happen. Whereas stakes, you can see them more, it's more of a visual, and if you do hit them, you're less likely to hurt yourself. So from a commercial standpoint, for sure I don't want to work my insurance out because I got unlimited. Your homeowners, I don't think you want to work your homeowners out either. So kind of watch that one. If it's off in the corner someplace, probably okay to use that technique. If a contractor is using it, he's probably an idiot or uninsured. You don't want to do that. Okay. Let's go over evergreens. Get that back here.
Question. Is
Yeah.
there a proper way of taking them out of the bucket?
There is no proper way or improper way. We'll go over that in just a second with the evergreens because it's more prominent with the evergreens than here. So how to take them off. Most of these, if it's well rooted, I could lift this up and pop it right off, or I'll lay it down and scooch it off. If it's really stubborn, let's say a cottonwood or a willow, they're notoriously aggressive with the roots. Big, massive trees. Sometimes they'll fill up the bucket so fast, or they'll come out the hole and start rooting down. There I might have to cut. I'll actually take a razor blade or my pruners and I'll cut the bucket off. That's how I'll do it that way. Okay. Most of them will slip right off.
And if the soil's more wet, does it come out easier, or because on some trees it seems the
Yeah.
soil breaks away. On some trees it stays right there to where you can put it in.
Yeah.
Is there a condition?
There's no right or wrong. Will moist trees come out better than dry trees? There's no right. It depends on the tree variety more so than anything else.
Does the soil actually fall apart easier if it's wetter or dry?
And it depends on the grower and what kind of soil mix they use.
Okay.
So we've got 3 or 4 growers of trees. You know, some guys grow apple trees really well. We'll go to them. Some grow aspens. That's their thing. Some grow conifers, the evergreens. So it depends on the soil mix they're using. Most of our trees are rooted out enough, they won't fall apart. So if it's well overgrown, I mean, I don't know. Let's see if we can pop this one out. I have not tested this. Aspens are not, there we go. So this is ideal. This is like the perfect rooting. It's fully rooted, but it's not starting to spin around in the bucket. It's ideal. Now sometimes you'll go to some of the box stores, they're taking the leftover material, so the overgrown material, it looks like a great value in the bucket, but it's really leftover from last year, and it should have been planted or shifted. Sometimes they'll upsize the pot. It should have been done last year, but it didn't, so now it's starting to grow in a circle. And once a tree starts to grow in a circle, it just has it in its mind, that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what it keeps doing. You plant it, there's all kinds of stuff you can do to slice and root prune. What I found is many times when a tree is starting to be overgrown, it'll continue to keep doing, it still does that. Even though you prune it and do other stuff, it keeps growing in a circle. So that's ideal what you want. That shouldn't come apart. So if it's rooted out enough, I could beat that on the ground, it still would not come apart. That's ideal. It depends on the grower. So buy from Waters Garden Center, probably you'll be okay. Otherwise, no guarantees. With evergreens, here's the tricky thing with evergreens. Boy, this is hard you have to just trust me on this a little bit. We really go out of our way with our evergreens. We're kind of famous for our conifers. Conifers are those things, needled trees, okay? Spruce, pine, cedar, cypress, spruce, and well, I'm sure some other stuff. Anything with a needle like that. To get a really, really nice, full evergreen, it needs to be grown in the ground. It cannot be grown in a bucket. So, I've got this guy. You can just see this is a nice Vanderwolf pine. I'll pull this up here. Does very, very well. We have natural pine forests that just grow really well. Or junipers and pines, exceptional. Firs, exceptional. Just we're in evergreen country. What happens in a container, this is the only soil it's ever known, this particular plant. In a seedling thrown in here, you can see it's kind of thin at the bottom. They never fill out nicely when grown in a container. That's fine for a little guy. We're bringing in the Christmas tree looking stuff. People are going to be decorating. As soon as those pumpkins are out here in about 3 weeks, the evergreens are going in. We're here to help you decorate and plant, that kind of stuff. These are cute. As you get bigger, these trees will not fill out like this. This has to be grown in a field, much like corn. They just line them out in a row, and they grow them for this is probably 10 years old, and they get their fullness to them. If you're growing them like that, they have to be root pruned. Because a tree, what it does, naturally, it grows a hockey stick. It puts on about 2 foot down, turns, starts running hundreds of feet. You need to prune that root so it starts putting on more and more fibrous root mass. Otherwise, when you dig it and try to pot it up, which is what this one's been done, it won't have enough root to transplant. So it'll look great in the nursery for about 6 months, and it slowly fades. You took it home and planted it, and then it dies. That's a notorious thing. So we go and actually walk the fields. And when I walk, I'll look to see where one has been dug. And I'm looking to see, do I see roots, multiple roots in that hole? Has it been root pruned? Or I'll flat out ask the farmer basically, how many times have you root pruned this tree? And he'll either know the answer immediately because he knows that's a problem, or he'll go, I don't know. I just brokered this stuff and I just bought it from someone else, and the trees have been left idle for 5 years and I just harvested them. Watch that one. Be really careful with your evergreens. This is really, really important. So if you planted one and struggled in the past, more than likely, that is the reason why you've struggled with that. So this has been in the field for probably 7 years. We dug it. It's been root pruned a couple times. We've dug it out. We've actually put it into a bucket because that sells easier. It's easier to maneuver, easier to ship, easier to get home. It's just better. It shows off better. We'll then root this out for about 6 months at the farm. Then we finally ship it down. That's how evergreen should really be done. Anything over about 4 foot and taller, that's kind of how it's the right format for it, especially in an arid climate. Where it's dry, that really plays out because our dryness just sucks the life out of things. And so kind of watch that one. There's also ball and burlap. Sometimes you'll hear that. And then there's potted. So this was potted right in the field and then rooted out right in the container. There is no burlap, but I gave it a great example. This one was grown. It just depends on the equipment they're using in the farm. This one was actually grown in a field. This is a Forsythiata. It's a columnar spruce. It grows tall like a Colorado, but very narrow. So this you put by a driveway, walkways. There's a place for dwarf or narrow trees. This one was potted. It was basically dug, hand dug, and then it was wrapped in this burlap strap. It just keeps the roots in place while they're getting into the pot. So it's called ball and burlapped. So it's a ball-shaped root wrapped in burlap. It's a standard term in the industry. When you plant this, You'll plant this right in the ground, right with the burlap on it. The question always comes up, what do I do with this burlap? At the very, very end, I'll snip the ties. I'll actually keep this stuff, this nylon on, this baling wire, basically, strap. Then I'll lay I'll lay this burlap beside, and I might cut it off or I might bury it, depends on, I just don't want to see it. But then I'll plant this that's the soil level, and I'll just lay this open. You don't want to keep those ties still wrapped around to that trunk, because many times it will girdle the tree. So the tree will actually grow, and this stuff doesn't compost very quickly, and so it'll actually eat its way into the trunk. So plant it just the way it is, and then at the very, very end, I'll sever these ties, lay open the burlap, and then call it all good. The roots go right through that burlap like it was nothing. For the really, really big trees, 24-inch box, sometimes our big 25, 35, 45-gallon buckets, they'll have an actual cage that they've wrapped in. The tree is so heavy that they actually have a cage. They'll put burlap inside of a cage, and the cage actually helps them maneuver it around. You plant the tree right in the ground with the cage and everything. The roots go right through it. But then I would cut at the very end, cut the straps and lay open the burlap and plant it. Okay, I'm giving you all the scenarios with trees. It's too much. And you may only want little tiny trees, and none of this even pertains. But as soon as you started getting into the head high and taller kind of trees, especially the evergreens, you'll see these different types of scenarios as you plant. That's what you're looking for. And again, if you get into it, you don't know what to do, just ask. We'll show you what to do. And questions on evergreens? Now, I wrote a book. It's called The Secret Garden, Plants as a Natural Privacy Screen. It was released last week. Okay, just out. I've got 3 books that I've written. This one's just on local plants you can use for privacy and how to use them. And it's not just a big wall of green, sometimes how to blend. I'll send you a link so you can download that if that's of interest. Give me your email address. It'll be to you by probably Monday. So that'll be that book. It's in a PDF format. So you need Acrobat Reader to download it, print it out. And then it's maybe 30 pages or so. It's pretty short, sweet, lots of pictures. It's pretty. I'm kind of proud of it. So Ken was my definite assistant on helping us publish that out. Yes?
What's your opinion on Colorado blue spruce? That's our favorite.
Yeah. So I love it when people, especially women, ask my opinion. Because I never get that. I have a house full of women in my house, even the dogs are women, so I never get that question. Thank you. Colorado spruce, excellent tree for here. Very, very nice. Grows very, very well. Some very majestic Colorados. There's also some new varieties out that are dwarfed. Baccarat, Hoop's Eye, Fat Albert, the 3 that we sell here. They're basically a Colorado spruce, but they don't get as tall. They stay shorter in size, so maybe 15 foot or so instead of the typical 50 to 80 foot. You get a really old Colorado, they're way beyond roof level, and I don't care what size house you got, it's way beyond that. They go to the moon. Some of these stay shorter, and sometimes the color will come out. So these are grafted trees. We're actually taking a cutting, and then grafted onto a special root, typically Colorado kind of rootstock. And then it comes out with a real bright, almost silvery blue color to them. So you'll see that as you look at the different models. You go, wow, that one's really bright. Why? Because probably a special variety of Colorado spruce. So think of the size you ultimately want it to be. Colorados are 20 foot by 50 foot. I mean, they're taking up some real estate. And if that's too big, I might go with a Fat Albert, which is 15 by 15.
But they're so majestic.
They are majestic, yeah. Maybe in our lifetime, maybe not in our lifetime. Yeah, but they can get.
One, it was a Christmas tree. California, the high desert.
Oh yeah, little guy.
It was about 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
It was just so. That was my baby.
Yeah.
I nurtured it.
That's good. They are majestic. They're perfectly shaped. When people don't know the name of Colorado spruce, they go, the one that looks like a Christmas tree. That's all I know. Okay, I know which one. This one, right?
It's not that perfect, triangle shape.
Yeah.
That I've seen.
Depends on the model. There's some that grow more wild and some that grow very, very shapely. Depends. So Black Hill spruce. It's a very green, shorter needle, very full. It's perfect. It's cookie cutter. That's how it grows. So it depends on the spruce model, the tree that you're looking. So you gotta go, what size do I want it to be and what color? After that, we can hone in and go, oh, as you just described, there's 3 choices you have here. 1, 2, or 3. We can hone it in. But on the lot here, we got 2 acres of plants. We'll have 30 varieties of different sizes and shapes of different conifers. So we want to hone that in for you. The native varieties, right now we're starting to promote fertilize. The most important feeding of the year is October. So you want to get food onto your entire landscape. Folks will ask, well, what about my natives? Ponderosas, pinyon pines mainly. There's a few native firs, a few junipers, some other things. Should I fertilize those? And the answer is absolutely yes. You need to fertilize everything in the yard. And here's why you want to fertilize the natives. A lot of folks will go, well, it's been growing there for decades by itself. Why should I fertilize? Because your house wasn't there 30 years ago. Neither was the road. We've actually changed our environment where the plants are struggling. We're actually having outbreaks of bark beetle, Ips beetle, tip borer, flathead borer. There's a lot of insects that feed on the natives, and when they're stressed at all, they're high risk. So by simply nurturing them a little bit, it really keeps them robust, and they can compete with nature that comes after them. So I do fertilize my own natives. And some of you bought your lot. You built your house around these. You may have seen decks built around a ponderosa. You've got the entrance of this beautiful house, $1 million house, and it's the 2 pinyon pines. They built the entire compound is around these couple natives. If you lose some of these natives, you're not able to replace them. There's no value you can put on. They're worth thousands, but you can't replace them in your lifetime. Simply by fertilizing them in October, just once a year, and then watering those natives in April, May, and June. Take a soaker hose or something. Just give them once a month a deep soak. You will have beautiful, beautiful trees that stay there. Now, the ornamental stuff, things that weren't naturally, you've planted them, it's called ornamental plantings. Those things I would fertilize more often, 3 times a year, spring, summer, and fall. And I water more often than once a month, April, May, and June, because they don't have the root mass to them yet. As they mature, then you can cut back on some of that irrigation, really cut it back. Like in my backyard, I've got a lot of native stuff. I'm watering about twice a month, even during the heat of summer, because they're fully rooted, they're native stuff, they're meant to go, and I've got heavy clay soil. So I tend to overwater those things, not underwater. Okay? Why don't we take a walking tour, and then we can answer questions. So tree sales, this is the way nurseries work in the high country. We're open year-round. We plant year-round. Contractors come in installing year-round, but we can't ship product in year-round. So we're front-loading. We need to bring things in now and have it acclimate, or we get used to. It goes down our cycle. I've got to order enough to get me through about February. So it looks like we have too many plants because we do. We're loading up so that they will take our cold. If I were to ship it right from California, Oregon, Nevada, where we're shipping from, and it's 10 degrees out, it may or may not, probably it would be shocked, and it couldn't transition into our cold. As long as it filters, as long as it fades, transitions or acclimates to our cold on our cycle, everything is good. So it's all fine. So that's why we're loading up right now. And we do have a tree sale spike right now. So a lot of trees go in the fall because people know that's when the ideal time to plant. That would be for fruit trees, evergreens, whatever trees you got, bigger material. This is absolutely a sweet spot for it. We are mild enough though that you can plant year round. We're not super hot like Phoenix in the summer, and we're not super cold like Flagstaff in the winter. So our ground never truly freezes. I think last year, we didn't freeze at all last year. The year before that, it froze maybe an inch. We just picked right through it, sort of kept on planting. Never slowed us down. So here, we've got quite a selection of different trees. You're seeing as large as, stay there, I'll bring it to you. That's an aspen, maybe, I don't know, 10, 12 feet tall. This would definitely stake. Now this is going to lose its leaves. Aspens were one of the first ones to lose their foliage, but still, trust me, you do want to stake this. Put a stake on either side, because next spring it's going to leaf out this flush growth, and it's just going to catch every bit of that spring prevailing southwest wind. That's pretty. Aspens, as they age, they put on a thicker layer of bark, and so they'll become whiter and whiter and whiter. As they're young like this, you're just starting to see a little bit of hue white on the bottom. It'll actually be, the whole thing will be just solid white as it matures. So youngsters don't lighten up as well as more mature things. Some of the autumn blaze maples, I think this one actually turns not white, has a real light gray color to it. I've planted one of these at every house I've had just because I love maples, and they're so hardy here. There's no real insects that go after them. They're just a tough little tree. But as this tree matures, as the trunk matures, it'll change from this red color to a real, not white, but just, you'd almost think it's white. It's a real light gray color, very pretty. With or without foliage, it's very, very pretty.
How long does it take before it starts changing that color? How old is it?
This grows, maples are fast. Most of the maples that do well here. We don't plant a lot of hardwood maples or sugar maples like the Midwest does. They leaf tears what happens, the wind tends to shred the leaves. So we plant these Fremontii, or it's a faster grower. This will grow probably 3 foot a year
And
if
when
it's
does
in
it
the
start
soil.
turning that lighter color?
Year 2, pretty short order, very short order, fast growers.
I'm torn between that and the Raywood ash.
Raywoods are pretty. The Raywoods are becoming, they're harder to find because in the Midwest, they've all been decimated. There's an insect, there's a boar that's going after them that has just wiped out entire forest. They're all gone. There's none
They're just
left.
so thick and dark green.
Here, they haven't made it past the Rockies yet. I don't predict they will. That's a long haul to make it here, but insects are a funny beast. You just never know. That's the one risk you have by planting Raywoods. They're tough, they're small leaf, they're drought hardy, they're pretty purple in the fall, and they're lollipop shaped. So like the perfect little shape when they're younger, they're like lollipop, just straight trunk,
Yeah.
perfect shape.
They are a beautiful shape and
Yeah.
dark green, thick.
This one was, I mentioned this before, this is a Black Hill and Norway spruce. This is Norway spruce. Big means super, super green. Nothing is as green as a Norway. Central leader, big swooping branches. Very, very pretty. You're like a Christmas tree looking thing. Now here we just uncut these, so they're kind of crammed together. But you can see as we cut them open, they lay out, they start to relax. They just have that perfect little shape to it. But there, you really want to make sure you're looking, when you look at your evergreens, you really want to look for a straight trunk. Because once it starts dog-legging, it never seems to straighten back up. That's for the slow growers. This one grows about this much a year. If you want to know how fast it grows, that's how much it grew last year. Is that 6-8 inches? It's a
How
slow
big is
grower.
it? Yeah.
Gets to the moon. It goes very, very tall. Spruce are typically slow growers. The fast growers are your deodar cedars, very fast growers. Your cypress, Arizona cypress, Leland cypress, those are fast growers as well. Okay? Probably the number one seller as far as evergreens go are right behind you. This is an Alberta spruce. I sell hundreds of these. This one I tell folks, plant by the size that you want, because it grows maybe, what is that? I don't know, 2 inches a year, maybe? It is a very painfully slow grower. So this one we put into containers, raised beds, at the front entrance of those pillars, that's where we're planting those. The garage, either side, in a pot, that's where we're planting these. This is one you don't want to wait. You don't want to have it grow up, because you'll be gone by the time it's up to size. You want to buy the one that's the size you want.
We got 6 of them in front of the house. It's wide.
Yeah.
And they're all different sizes.
Different size, that's a good
Oh,
look.
yeah, it looks good.
Number one seller only because they're cute, they're little, and they keep their bounds. We decorate with these as much as we do landscaping. If you want to go more privacies, faster growers, we go over here. Now this is a little walking tour kind of begin. So we separate ours out. Here we've got all of our kind of privacy screens. So your junipers, Italian cypress, cedars, all the fast growing, thick evergreen kind of stuff. We go from here all the way down. Arizona cypress, probably the number one recognized because it just grows wild. Baghdad, all the way up. A lot of the junipers you think is a juniper, it's not. It's a cypress, Arizona cypress. The only way I can tell the difference between the two, junipers will put on a little tiny berry, I don't know about that size, and the cypress put on a little tiny pine cone. It's a bigger, it's maybe the size, smaller than a golf ball, maybe big marble or something. It's that size, but it's a little tiny pine cone. That's how I tell the difference. The structure, the foliage, from a distance, they look the same. Fast growing, evergreen, low, drought hardy. It's a tough little plant. Good one for here. The same thing, it's a cousin. This is Lain cypress. That's Arizona cypress. They're both cypress. They both grow 20 feet tall. They both grow 12 feet wide. Fast growers, thick as can be. Just one's green, one's blue. You want blonde or brunette? That's kind of the only difference between the two. This one kind of has more of a feathery leaf to it. This one has more of a traditional kind of juniper-y looking kind of needle.
You have to trim these up and all that.
Don't have to trim them or do anything, just let them go. Here's another thing too with a lot of your evergreens, your faster growers, let's say privacy. A cypress doesn't look, now this gets 20 by 12. It's a massive ball-shaped kind of plant. It's big, but you'll never see them that big in the nursery. They have to be in the ground to get thick. So they'll tend to be in the ground for about a year, and you go, the thing isn't growing. What is going on? What's happening? The first year, all they do is root. They don't grow very much on the top growth. That next season, you kind of go, whoa, this thing just, where'd this tree just doubled in size? Where'd this come from? It was finally rooted out enough to start taking off in your yard. It's been personal experience what I've kind of found. Okay. Natives, we do have pinyon pines and ponderosas. I sell more pinyons. They seem to be a little thicker, a little sexier too. A ponderosa pine, basically you're planting a trunk. That's just what it is. It's got all the top growth up here. Even when they're a small size, they're mainly lots of trunk and some big needles to it. I sell more Austrian pine than I do ponderosa pine. They kind of look the same, but Austrian pines, they hold their foliage right to the ground. Nice central leader to them. So they get big long needle to them, so they just look better in the landscape. And quite honestly, they have less issues. Bark beetle doesn't like an Austrian pine as much as they do a ponderosa pine. So ponderosas can be a pressure sometimes from nature tends to go after them sometimes. So watch them. So good, strong native plant. I don't know, I could keep going down the line. Let me show you the fastest growing screening plant. Then we'll go over here. This is Deodar cedar. It's the fastest growing of the evergreens, bar none. It'll grow 2-3 feet a year. It is misplanted more times than anything else too. This guy goes 80 feet tall. I mean, it goes to the moon. It gets huge, and it's big, swooping 25-foot branches. But they look cute when they're young. So they'll plant these in the front yard to screen or by the driveway. And within just 2-3 years, it's overpowering their entire yard. Be careful when you plant these fast growers. This is made to be out to the back of the property, in the corners, back where it's accentuating a visual sight line. It's blocking that neighbor's shed or the contractor that's putting his debris pile there. That's where this is made to go because it's such a fast grower. It looks innocent. Once it gets in the ground, it quickly turns into taking up real estate from me to you and then some. So watch that one. Pretty tree. This is also the statehood tree. A couple of years ago, we turned 100 years old. We were planting these all around town, on the courthouse, Charlotte Hall, college, because it's our statehood tree. There's some really majestic, very large specimens all around town. Okay, why don't we go this way?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are there any trees that if your goat gets out of the pen and eats, they're gonna like?
Goats? You're asking me about goats?
No, eating trees, getting sick if if they eat your tree.
There, I have to legally say,
You don't know.
check with your veterinarian.
Okay.
I don't know, goats. Now
No
my
venomous
uncle.
animals or something like that.
Yeah.
If they eat your trees.
Horses
they
the
can-
same way. Horses will eat anything.
Yeah.
They have really sensitive stomachs.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just really got to be kind of careful. There's a lot of resources online too. We
Okay.
probably have some here, but online is more up to date.
and probably more regionalized.
Okay,
for
I didn't know if
certain
they were
kinds of-
poisonous to animals or.
Yeah, generally not. The only one to watch, I just don't know. I know walnuts are a real problem. Rhubarb, some have really poisonous, really have issues that are notorious. Most evergreens, not such a
Okay.
problem. Let's go this way. Right on time. What do you think? Like it or don't like it?
Different.
It's different.
Looks good.
This is a weeping atlas cedar. It's related to what we were just looking at, but it's in a weeping dwarfed form. So it's a topiary. If you're from the East Coast, you seem to like it, or hardcore gardener, you're just bored with plants. You've done it all. You tend to really like it, or you hate it. So it's made to create an emotion in the landscape. But they do spectacularly here.
What happens in 5 years? It's going to look like that?
What it does, you can keep it trained in the serpentine and keep training it going up. I've seen them wrapped around buildings. I've seen them grow up and then just let them flow over. They'll take on the hillside, whatever shape that's there on that in between the rocks.
Is it really flexible?
Very interesting.
When it's
You can
grow?
train it to go wherever you want it to grow. And drought hardy, tough, no bugs eat it, no animals seem to leave it alone. You can plant it in a raised bed, you can do it in a pot, or just right out there in the landscape. But just point it out because I know you all are gardeners, because you're basically here in a garden class in October. If it were May, I would probably bypass it because I'd have half the group going, let's go this way. So we'll just go this way, kind of walk up the line here. We'll just highlight a few of the more popular type of trees. I've got far too many to highlight every single one. We can give you the high points. Number one seller of all the ornamental trees. It's almost overdone. Purple leaf plum. It's purple in the fall. It's purple in the spring. It's purple and it's purple. It's good if you just commit to all purple in your yard, like some I've seen, they've got rock lawns, rock yards, basically, just purple. Can look you need a little more dimension than that. I'd plant some other stuff with it, but it is a number one seller. It's a one that has pink flowers in the spring, bright pink, no foliage, just pink. Then it comes out with these purple leaves. Some varieties can have a bit of color change. They become more purple than others. Basically, they just go purple and they drop. That's really what they do in a nutshell. Someone had mentioned Raywood ash. That's this one. This is one of the ladder trees to turn purple in the fall.
It's not red?
It's not red. It's like a red purple. It's darker than red. It's really robust. It's a dark red, or I call it purple. But I'm a man. God only gave me 7 crayons in my box. I don't have as many. Some of you are 64 crayon folks. Describe periwinkle. I can't do that. This is purple. Good drought hardy tree for here. And again, it grows central leader, just full. And I call it lollipop. Just perfectly round shape to it. As it gets older, it becomes more open and more shapely. But as a youngster, it's kind of very nice. Let's walk up this way. Did you?
Yeah.
So the borers, they can get some issues. This is the native one. This is Arizona ash.
That's really pretty.
It gets a real bright, it's drought hardy as nails. It's tough. More open, more wild looking, more informal than a Raywood ash. Has less issues with bugs and stuff. And it turns real bright gold, like an aspen gold in the fall of the year. So I'll probably plant more of these than I do the Raywoods just because they're less they're more native.
How fast
so-
does that grow?
It's a slow grower. Most of your ash are about they're short trees, 30 foot by maybe 28. Low 30, tops out at 30 foot. 20 somethings, and kind of ball shaped.
I like that tree.
Okay. A couple here, I mentioned Bradford pears. Back here, this is a whole line of ornamental pears. They're related to fruiting pears. They bloom out in spring in a bright white, like royal white. They'll be huge, 30 foot by 30 foot round, all covered in bright white in the month of March, April. And then it's also the last tree to turn red in the fall of the year. Nice, thick, full, and again, they don't get that full in the buckets, but in the landscape, perfect shape to them. So it's a good little tree here. It's got a real thick, heavy, waxy leaf. It makes it very drought hardy. It's a tough little plant. A lot of them are planted around the courthouse. You'll see them. The last tree in red, you can spot them. Oh yeah, Ken talked about that. That's an ornamental pear.
Like when would that be?
Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sweet gums. Sweet gums are very good. Very bright orange color. They grow central leader with a kind of more narrow shaped, kind of a columnar shape. Now typically, as a kid, they always formed a ball to them. A little ornamental fruit, not fruit, it's a seed pod. They can be a little trashy. We've bred that out of them, so it's a new variety that doesn't form that seed pod. So now you've got an orange tree, sweet gum, pretty, that doesn't have as less maintenance to them, less rake up in the spring. Let's go this way. Oaks. Oaks do really, really well. Now we have the scrub oak, the native wild oak that grows here. Not many people want more of those. They're kind of weedy. They tons of acorns on. They come up every place. You can't kill them. Once they start getting rooted, you can't get rid of them, hardly. But these guys grow wild up in the ridge lines. Pin oaks or the red oaks. It turns a real bright red in the fall of the year. Slow, methodical, long-lived oak. This will be death. Your grandkids will be long gone. This will still be going strong. Very hard wood. Very few things go after this, the oak trees. Good tree for here, okay? Especially if you like red. We had mentioned elms. Where to go? Here are some of the new elms from the, I don't know, there's just a lot of new varieties of elm. We already went over that in the class, pretty much detailed, but here they are. From the Princeton elm that you're touching right there, that's one that's planted around the courthouse. Big leafed elm, or American elm, to the smaller leafed Siberian or the Asian kind of elms. These do not seed, don't get the bugs, don't have the issues that some of your wild elms that do here. Birch, we mentioned birch, I think is a better alternative than aspen, but I can't convince you of that. If you want an aspen, that's what you got your heart set on. But they tend to get white bark earlier than an aspen does, and they don't have some of the leaf burns or leaf spotting. Some of the aspens tend to get in the area. Okay. Now where else am I going? Let's go up to fruit trees. Should we do that? We'll touch on that and then we'll call it all good. Watch your step on that border there.
What's this tree?
That is a tulip tree. It's if you're from the south, you're real familiar with that. Big leafed, takes our wind. It's real tough. Pretty gold color in the fall, but it puts on a tulip-shaped flower in the late spring and summer, which is what it's famous for. Big shade tree that blooms. Very, very hard to find. It does very, very well. It loves our clay soils here. This adapts really well. Big tree. We're talking 50 by 40. It's a big, big tree.
How fast does it grow?
Fast grower. Yeah, very fast. Our fruit trees are here. Basically, you go from this way up are all the fruit trees. We do not grow citrus. And I've got a whole class on nothing but fruit trees. There's a way to do that, but in a nutshell, in 90 seconds or less, we grow apples and pears really well. In fact, the harvest is coming on right now. Peaches, we've been harvesting peaches like crazy. Before that was cherries. Does very, very well here. Apricots and nectarines, they grow, and sometimes you'll get fruit, but not always. It's all about the spring bloom. A lot of the trees here get tricked into coming out early. They'll bloom, they'll actually start setting fruit, and then a frost comes and takes the blossom or takes the fruit. So, if you're planting on any kind of fruit trees, make sure you're getting the latest bloomers possible with fruit. Now, we've curated ours, so we're getting the latest possibles, but even still, apricots bloom before cherries. Cherries bloom before apples. And so the most likely to fruit are your apples and pears because they're typically the end of April, May, they're in bloom setting fruit, or we're past the chance of frost. The very first one to bloom are always apricots and nectarines, typically the end of March, April is when they're blooming, or our last frost is Mother's Day, first weekend in May. So they're exposed for 3 or 4 weeks to potential frost, and so that's why many times the frost will take out those fruits. It's a pretty tree, won't kill the tree, you just don't get the fruit. And that's why you're planting a fruit tree. So that's kind of one thing to watch. And that's of interest to you. We give you a personal lesson on that and show you which ones are better, cross pollinators, does it take more than one? Those are all complicated issues we need to sort out for you. Okay? Yeah.
There are some apple trees that grow here that don't have to cross-pollinate, right? Where you can just have one tree and you'll get apples?
No, there are not. No, Yellow Delicious comes close. It can put some fruit on by itself, or Golden Delicious, it's got a couple names. It also cross-pollinates all of the trees. Now bees, if there's a tree anywhere in the neighborhood that can pollinate, bees will do the work for bees and moths, or cross-pollinate your fruit trees. So it doesn't have to be in the same yard, it can be on the same street. So many times you'll plant a fruit tree and it'll pollinate because of someone else that you didn't even know was there, is pollinating. But no, they do take 2 to tango. Same with pears, it takes 2. There are some cherries, not all, that self-fruit, and we've got charts. If you look on the back side, we've got charts that tell you all of that stuff. So we're trying to take that guesswork out of that for you.
Do the blossoms that set the fruit blow off with the wind? If we have a strong wind, that blossom.
Now, sometimes the fruit, as it's in the fruit stage, where we get that prevailing southwest wind we talked about, you get a windstorm that does blow them off before they're pollinated. Usually that's a pollination issue, not a wind issue. So usually we don't have enough bees in the area. There are some neighborhoods that there are not enough bees to pollinate things. So that's more of an issue than the wind or thrip. Thrip is a little tiny, also called no-see-um. Sometimes they can bite your skin. They'll get into that blossom. They'll bite the blossom, and the fruit will actually kill the fruit. So it pollinated, but the insect ate the fruit or sucked it dry before it could actually set fruit. They come out in spring, right when certain things blossom. I have seen, if the thrip population is bad enough, I've seen them take the fruit set. So watch that one. Usually it's not the wind. It gets blamed because it looks like the wind blew it off, but it's not the wind. Okay. Good question though. Good, sharp. Anyone else?
Now you talked about staking your trees,
Yeah.
but the green little rubbery stuff. How do you do that?
Now on our tree stake kit, we put together kits that kind of have everything you need. We put a V-strap. It's a strap that we've put grommets into that goes around the trunk, and so you have it. It goes around the trunk, but doesn't girdle the trunk, doesn't to cut the trunk. For smaller trees, you can use the tie tape. Is what you're talking about?
Probably.
Make 1 inch and 1/2 inch. Use the 1 inch. I don't care for tie tape myself because it's ugly. It's bright and flashy. It's like, look, I'm newly planted. The V straps are wood colored. It fades away in the landscape. For youngsters, tie tape works okay. It's inexpensive. It's easy. Bigger trees, it's not quite strong enough. It stretches to where it's hard to get enough to keep a bigger specimen intact. For evergreens, let's say a big spruce tree or something, I would not use tie tape. It's just too big. The reason we're staking mainly the evergreens, because we get really heavy snows in spring and fall. The very first snows of fall, and that last one in March, they'll weight up. We get 6-8 inches of snow that weighs, and it just loads up on this, just loads up. And so you get this foot of snow over this entire thing, and it just leans over, goes donk, falls right over. So all the root hairs that did form break and they're severed. Doesn't kill the tree. Just you're starting from square one again all over. You set it back up and it roots out, and we're mainly keeping it so it won't lean over from the heavy snows. That goes for cypress, cedars, junipers, any of those evergreens. I would encourage you to stake those. And they're heavy. You wouldn't think you would need that.
But those snows in basically November and March are so heavy that it just causes the damage. Doesn't kill the tree, just you lose a season's worth of root growth. Okay, good questions. Thanks, group.
What if you've got a, I can't think of it, you're not hooked up to a sewer, you're,
A water line
no,
or septic system?
septic system. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So how far away should you
Oh
stay?
man, septics, you got to be really careful. I would never plant that tulip tree. I love tulip trees, but don't get anywhere close to your septic field, or it will clog it up. Cottonwoods, willows, aspens, notorious for clogging up systems. And a rotor-rooter bill, I don't know if you've had one of those lately, they're not cheap. It's hundreds and hundreds of dollars to ream it out again. I would keep those away at minimum 25 feet. If it's really big, let's say you're doing cottonwoods or these really big trees, sycamores, I'd probably go 50 feet, the other side of the yard. Or, if it's in the backyard, I would put it in the front yard kind of thing. So I'd keep it away. If I'm helping clients with alternate systems or septic fields, that kind of stuff, usually I'll recommend smaller trees like red buds, crab apples, purple leaf plums, little guys. Things are cute. Desert willows, catalpas. They're non-invasive, they're not a problem, and they don't tend to lift driveways and get into septics and cause issues. So kind of watch that one. Okay, that is a problem. I have personal experience.
If you're using soaker hoses on a fairly new tree,
Yeah.
so where do you put the hose? I mean,
Oh, okay, good. Or drip system. Let's go
Okay,
soakers or
okay.
drip system.
Okay.
So let's say we take this apple tree. Let's tie it up. What do we have? Let's say we take this hoop-sized spruce. You'd want to put the emitters right at the base because there's no roots out here yet for year one. So put it right there because all the roots surviving on that. Year two, I'd take a T and I'd cut that off and I'd put sucrose just outside of the root. So I'd modify my drip or irrigation system as the trees mature. So your soaker hose would be just out, just right at encircling, or sometimes I'll cross it right over the main trunk, main root system. Yeah, good question. Okay.
We have a smoke tree that's multi-trunk. It's probably got 8 trunks on it.
Pretty, very nice.
It's grown a lot.
Yeah,
It's probably grown that much just this summer.
very nice.
And I don't necessarily want to have all those trunks. I mean, it's
Yeah.
going to be a bush.
Sure.
How do you, they're all growing from the side. The ones
Yeah.
that are the originals, they're in the middle and they're little.
So suckers, she's got a smoke bush, which is famous here. I'd say desert willow, chase tree, they're all kind of the same vein. They have the same issues. They can grow up multi-trunks, too many trunks. Sometimes lilac can do that. They sucker up. What to do there? Pick the ones you like and butcher everything else. Get rid of it. Don't let it grow. Contain it. We call it gardening. So you just garden your way out of that and thin it out. Now, when's the best time to prune? When do you do that? Right now, we don't do a lot of pruning because there's still a lot of bugs out. There's still mildews, there's still black spot, there's still issues. Everything is growing right now. So generally we'll wait until midwinter because it's cold, the sap has stopped flowing, and there's no insects to get into those wounds, those cuts. So usually after the new year is when we do most of our pruning. January, February, first part of March is the best window, especially your summer bloomers, like your smoke bush, chase trees, Rosa Sharons.
Crazy. It's a beautiful bush. About as this big and it's this tall.
Well, if you cut those off, all that energy will be focused on the remaining trunks.
Right.
So take the strongest, the trunks that are going the direction that you want, save those 3 to 5, and encourage those to grow. Cut everything else off. Also, another little secret, this is just something I've learned. I'm not taking pruners and daintily cutting them off neatly. I notice that they come back and sucker faster. If I just rip them off, I'll rip them. So I have a jagged cut. They don't tend to come back as quickly. Personal experience. I don't have anything in the book to tell you that, but I just noticed when it's nice and neat, it sends a sucker faster than if I just rip it off. You can do that when it's younger. If you got big trunks, it's not as practical. You got to take a saw to it.
And this is our first year here. We have a lot of rose bushes. When do you start trimming them down?
Rose bushes out. You should be on our email list, or if you get our gardener newsletter. Each week I write a garden column, and I'll write one in the month of March.
I did.
when it's time to prune every March, because I know everyone has the same question, every year it's the same. When I prune roses, month of March. So you'll be tempted earlier than that,
How
because
short
Phoenix
do they
all
do
cuts
here?
theirs back in November, December.
Right.
The Midwest does that too, so they can insulate them. Here, we keep the foliage mass intact through winter. By March, all the cold, we still get snow, but all the harsh cold's done. Then we'll cut it back and shape it up. So, yeah, 3 to 5 stems. We'll have examples, show you pictures, all of that in the month of March. Just put March. Okay. Thanks, you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.